time is the softball game? That you're gonna get to? Yes.
Oh, the movie, I have to be there.
Oh, the movie. At 8?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody else got an event? You gotta be at work? Is that what you said? Okay. Perfect. Let's go ahead and get started, okay? So we're gonna talk about leadership, okay? But more importantly, we're gonna talk about character in leadership. Because to me, your character is the foundation of your leadership, okay? And I wore my Mufasa shirt in representation of leadership. Anybody else big Disney fans? Yes?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, my favorite's Moana. It's my girl right there. And actually, Moana to me reminds me a lot about leadership as well, because she wasn't qualified, but she was called, and she exudated a great leadership in going and getting Maui, who did not have good character, by the way. Muscles, but not good character, okay? All right, so we're going to talk about leadership, but more importantly, we're going to talk about, are you worth following, okay? If y'all ever been around, and I'm sure that y'all have, around people who you're just like very intrigued by, you're like, oh, there's something special about this person. Like, I want to kind of figure this person out a little bit more. She's very interesting, he's very interesting. There's just something about them that they have good character. You kind of want to follow them just a little bit. Yes? Yeah? And then there's like the opposite end where you're like, I don't want to be around this person. You stay over there and do you. I'm going to stay over here and do me. Like, there's nothing good about the character of that person. Her, the one you're sitting next to? Yeah. Okay. So, this is a question that I wanted you to kind of keep in your mind the whole time that we're going over this. Alrighty? Alright. So, this is not Webster's dictionary definition. This is Dr. Miles Monroe. Any of y'all know who Dr. Miles Monroe is? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay, Connie does. It's because I told her who he was. But anyways, so Dr. Miles Monroe he has since deceased, but he was a preacher in the Bahamas. And he mainly taught on two key things. One was leadership, and one was the kingdom of God, okay? And he's wrote, I think, around 40 books or so. And he touches all different types of categories. But his two main are leadership and breaking down the kingdom of God and what it means. So if you ever want to research him, he'd be a perfect one to research, okay? So let's read this real fast. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration, generated by a passion, motivated by a vision, birthed by a conviction, and produced by a purpose, okay? And certain words are highlighted on this one. They're not highlighted on my little cheat sheet back there. But influence is highlighted, inspiration, passion, vision, conviction, and purpose. And they're highlighted for a reason, because if you don't have a purpose, you don't feel like God has put you here for a purpose, then you don't have a conviction, okay? And it kind of works from the bottom up. And for me, a conviction is something that God has really put on my heart to do, okay? For example, I feel very convicted to teach my generation and the younger generation about leadership, or about God, or about his kingdom, okay? But also, I think Connie and I both feel a conviction to teach women our age and younger self-worth, okay? So that is something that I personally am convicted with. You might have your own, okay? But my conviction flows from my purpose and why God put me here on this earth, all right? Vision to me is long-term. Yes, you have a day-to-day goal and day-to-day type vision of what you want your day to look like, but you also have to have a long-term vision as well. So most of y'all are in college and you're about to graduate, or you're a freshman, but you still need to think long-term as well, okay? So what is life going to look like when you get to that senior year and you're about to graduate, okay? So what is your conviction? What is your purpose? What is your vision for your life after college, or after a certain job, or after a divorce, or after family, okay? So everything you do, it's got to be a long-term type vision, all right? Passion, inspiration, and influence. Have y'all ever met someone who's just, it's like they're not passionate about anything? Have y'all ever met someone like that? Yes? They're just like, nah, it's whatever. Nah, me. It just drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. Y'all in here are athletes, so obviously you're passionate about the sport in which you play, okay? But through your passion, do you show inspiration on the floor? And through your inspiration, do you have influence of your teammates? Okay? But that can go off the court as well. When you have a family, are you going to be passionate about your family? Are you going to influence your family in a positive way? Some of you are going to be teachers. Are you going to be able to inspire your students and then influence them in a positive way? Okay? Or if you're going to run a business, same concept. Does everyone understand? Okay? All right, so let's move on real quick. Character. So we're going to touch just a couple things about what character is. And I already went over this, but character is your foundation of the type of leader which you are. So all of y'all know that if a house has a cracked or a bad foundation, what's going to happen to the house? It's going to fall, it's going to collapse, it's going to shift, it's going to do something that is pretty much kind of not really fixable. Okay? So character is your foundation. It's not the roof, it's not the walls. It is what your leadership lays on. Okay? So character is a commitment to a set of values without compromise. I'll give you an example. One thing that I am not willing to compromise is drinking. I don't drink. I don't care that other people do, but that is something that I value. I always have, always will. And it's something that I'm not willing to compromise. I might go to a party, hang out, have fun, but I'm not willing to compromise having a drink. But that's my value. Does that make sense? Okay. Character is dedication to a set of personal standards without wavering. So you guys are dedicated to working out for your sport. You guys are dedicated to going to the gym. You're dedicated when Coach Gill makes you lift certain weights. We're not always dedicated to a diet, but it's fine. It's fine. We burn enough calories throughout the day. Right, I brought sugar cookies, so I can't say anything. Okay, I'm all about some sugar cookies. I'll work out extra tomorrow. It's fine. All right, but you got to be dedicated to it. And that same thing goes whenever you're off the court. If you have a certain standard for your academics, well, you're dedicated to it. You're not going to compromise. I'm not willing to compromise my test score when I know I have a test and go to a party when I should really be studying. Okay? Same thing with if you were going to run a business. I'm not willing to compromise my value of running the business properly and, shove money under the table. Does that make sense? Okay? All right. Character is self-imposed discipline in keeping with moral conviction. So you have to have self-discipline. It is one of the fruits of the Spirit. It is the last one, and I personally think it's the last one because it is the hardest. It's the hardest one. It is absolutely the hardest one. Okay? But it is essential for building your character. You've got to have that self-discipline, and you've got to be dedicated, whether it's to your sport, your family, your schooling, your future, it doesn't matter. Okay? All right, character is a constant effort to incorporate one's words and actions. If you're going to talk the talk, you better, y'all are so good, so smart. Okay? If you're going to talk the talk, you better walk the walk. All right? Don't come up to me and be like, Coach, I'm going to be balling out next year. You're not even going to recognize me on the floor, and then you go and you sit on your butt all summer and don't do anything, and then you're just like, well, my friends and I, right? It's one thing to talk. Anyone can talk a good game. True? I could sit here and tell you I'm going to kick your butt at chess, and I'm going to do this, and I'm great at, and I've never played chess in my life. I will be horrible at it. Okay? But I can talk it up pretty good, right? Same concept. Okay? If you're going to talk it, you got to walk it. And it is a constant effort. Alrighty? Alright, last one. Character is sacrifice for one's main belief. What are you willing to sacrifice for? Take whatever it is you believe in, okay? And you've got to make certain sacrifices for that belief, okay? You're not willing to compromise. You're going to be self-disciplined, all right? And you've got to make certain sacrifices in order to reach that goal, that vision, that passion in which you have. Everybody with me so far? All right. You're going to enjoy this next slide. So, what does character look like? It looks like this. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about Sam and Joe real quick. All right? Two very different types of character. Sam is actually Samson. Does everyone know the story of Samson? Okay? If you don't, let me just give you a real quick rundown. Samson had the popularity vote. He had the looks, he had the beautiful hair, okay? He was the guy that every girl wanted, right? And he actually was given by God unbelievable strength. That was his gift, okay? That was his purpose. That was his goal. He was an Israelite. His job was to defeat the Philistines. He was a warrior, an Israelite warrior, okay? He didn't need an army to defeat a Philistine army. He had the strength to do it himself, all right? So this was the guy that everyone wanted to hang out with. He had the big muscles, okay? However, Samson, I'm not going to say he fell in love with a Philistine woman. It's more like he lusted after a Philistine woman, okay? And he wasn't allowed to have a Philistine woman. He was an Israelite. His job was to defeat and kick their butt. That was his job. Instead, he goes after Delilah. We all know Delilah, right? Okay. Even though he knew Delilah was out to get him, he still kept going back to Delilah. And Delilah would just pester him. How do you have your strength? Why do you have your strength? What makes you so strong? And the reason why she was asking this was because the Philistines, and whom she was a part of, wanted to defeat him because he kept killing all their warriors. So he went back because he lusted after Delilah. He went back, he compromised his character. He lost sight of his vision. He got drunk that night, and Delilah shaved his head because he had told her, if you take all my hair off, I lose all my strength. And that's exactly what she did. So he lost all of his strength. His character was completely broken. He was captured by the Philistines. He had no strength whatsoever. So he got thrown in jail, but not only that, they gouged his eyes out so he couldn't see. So let's have that conversation later after we eat. But he had all that done to him. He got thrown in jail. But he knew what Delilah was after. And yet he still compromised that. He had the popularity vote. He was the guy everyone looked up to, but he compromised and destroyed everything in his character so that he could lust after this one woman in which he wasn't even supposed to have. Okay? So, he gets thrown in prison. He spends a few years there. His hair grows back. The Pharaoh, the king at the time, said, bring Samson out. And they basically wanted to bring him out and make fun of him and violate him and stuff like that. Well, they did it in a temple, okay? So they brought him out, and Samson prayed just a very simple prayer. He said, God, one last time, give me all my strength back. And God granted him that, and he put his hands on the two pillars that basically held up the entire temple. And he got his strength, and he pushed them back, and the entire temple came down. He actually ended up killing more people in the temple at his death, at the end of his life, than he did when he had his strength and all, his glory, okay? So, he ended on a good note, but he compromised everything, okay? Joe, who is Joseph. Joseph did not have the popularity vote. In fact, he was hated by his brothers, okay? He was his father's favorite. His father told all his sons that, which is probably not the best thing to tell all of your children. Hey, you're my favorite, okay? But Joseph, his gift was he could translate dreams, right? So he translated this dream to all of his older brothers. Like, I had this great dream. You guys bowed down to me. It was amazing. Let me tell you about it. And they're like, no, we already don't like you. You already have a beautiful coat of many colors. And so they basically take him and throw him in a well. And they're like, well, now what do we do with him? So there was a guy traveling, and they basically sold him to this guy, okay? And as a slave. So he took him, and they go back to their dad, and they're like, Joe died. I'm so sorry. We don't know what happened, right? When in reality, they sold their own brother into slavery because they didn't like him. okay? So he's hated. He gets thrown into a well. Then they pull him out. They sell him to Potiphar. Potiphar takes him to his house. He actually does really well at Potiphar's. And Potiphar was a very wealthy, well-known man, okay? And he likes Joe so much that he makes him basically over all of his estate. So he's kind of like the main manager, okay? Well, Joseph stayed there for a while, and one time Potiphar left, and Potiphar's wife lusted after Joe. And she basically tried to seduce him several times, and he was basically like, no, 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 thank you, but no, okay? He would not compromise his character, period. He had already been thrown into a well. He had already been, hated by his brothers. He had every right to be angry, okay? So Potiphar comes back, and his wife basically meets him outside and be like, Joseph raped me, and he tried to do this, and Potiphar, being the good husband that he is, listened to his wife, and Joseph got thrown in jail. He spent several years in jail for nothing he had done. He didn't do anything wrong, okay? Because he wasn't willing to compromise his character, his vision or values or any of that. So he gets thrown in jail, and as he's there, the cupbearer of the king, of the Pharaoh, gets thrown in there, and they hit it off, hit a conversation, and he has a dream, and Joseph's like, oh, hey, I can tell you exactly what your dream means. So he tells him. Well, the cupbearer gets released and gets to go back and work for the king, and he's like, don't worry, I won't forget you. I'll tell you about the king, okay? So he goes back, cupbearer forgets him. So he sits in jail for a few more years. Then the king, Pharaoh, has a dream, and he's telling everybody, and everybody's like, I don't know. The cupbearer goes, oops, my bad. So there's this dude in your jail. He can kind of interpret dreams. So Joseph comes out, tells him, Pharaoh tells him his dream, and the dream actually wasn't a good dream. So like you go in front of the king, you're finally out of jail, he tells you his dream, and you're like, it's actually not a good dream. I'm not going to tell you something you want to hear. Please don't throw me back in jail. Okay? But, so basically there was going to be a famine. He tells Joseph, well, I'm putting you in charge. You know what's going to happen, I'm putting you in charge of it. And Joseph basically becomes second in command. The only person he has to report to is Pharaoh himself. So he went through all of that. Deceived by his brothers, his father thought he had been killed, sold into slavery, accused of something he didn't do, sat and rotted in the jail for a few years, okay? Finally went in front of the king, helped the king and all the people, and got put second in command. And through all of that, he never once compromised who he was as a person. His character never got destroyed, okay? Whereas Samson was the opposite, okay? So this just kind of gives you a little bit of what the two different types of characters look like, okay? So, we talked about what character looks like. So let's talk about how. How do I become a leader worth following? All right? You want me to wait? Okay. All right. So I picked this scripture, and this is Old Testament, and it's about Moses. And I think all of y'all know the story of Moses and the burning bush. If you don't, let me go over it really quick. Moses was actually raised in the Egyptian palace for 40 years, okay? He was a Jew, he was an Israelite, but he basically got taken in by Pharaoh and his wife. So he was raised in the palace for 40 years. He was well educated. He had money at his fingertips. All he had to do was snap his fingers and tell somebody what he needed, and they would do it, okay? Well, he noticed that he didn't like the fact that the Jews were the slaves, were Pharaoh's slaves, and these were a lot of people, okay? And Joseph actually was a Jew, but he was raised in the Egyptian family. Well, one day, he didn't like the fact that one of the Egyptian guards was beating one of the slaves to death. So he goes out there, and he meant to just kind of like rough him up a little bit, but he actually ended up killing him. Oops, sorry. So he had to leave. He fled because you're not allowed to kill, an Egyptian guard. It's not on the to-do list, all right? So he flees into the desert and spends another 40 years as a shepherd. He went from being basically a prince, wealthy, educated, living in a palace to living in a tent and tending sheep. Okay? So while he's on the backside of this mountain, all of a sudden he looks over and a bush is burning, but it's not burning. It's on fire, but the wood is not burning, if that makes sense at all. Okay? So he goes over there, he's like, that's very cool. What is happening? And as he's walking towards it, God speaks through it. And he basically tells Moses, hey, you're going to go back and tell Pharaoh, release my people. And Moses is like, you're funny, God, you guys, it's a humor. I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? I'm wanted there. And he said, no, yeah, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. I told you, tag, you're it. You got to go. Okay? And Moses starts giving all these excuses. Moses had a severe stuttering problem. So, any of y'all ever get nervous and you just all of a sudden can't get the words out? I can only imagine how the conversation went with God during this time. So, he had a stuttering problem, so he used that as an excuse, and God said, well, I'll tell you what to say, and if it makes you feel better, you can bring your brother Aaron, who can speak as well. So that one was allowed to be used. And then he said, well, I'm a fugitive, I can't go back there. He's like, no, you can't, I'm going to go with you. So he basically destroys all of Moses' excuses. Moses was he was a shepherd. And shepherds had a staff. Now this is my grandfather's walking stick. Don't make fun of it, it's fine. But a staff was much taller. It was about 6 feet tall, okay? And they used it as a weapon, but they also used it as a tool to move the sheep. So he's holding it in his hand, and God says, the Lord asked him, what is in your hand? And of course Moses is like, bro, I'm a shepherd, it's a staff. Right? Like, is that a real question? Then God said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a snake. I don't know about y'all, but I'm terrified of snakes. So Moses did exactly what I would have done. Moses ran from it. This white girl would have sprinted as fast as she could. Okay? But the Lord told him, stretch out your hand and grab it by the tail. I would have been out. I would have been out at that point. I'd be like, turn it into a puppy, and I'll grab it by the tail. Let's negotiate, God, because I'm not picking that up. All right? So Moses stretched out his hand, caught it, and it became a staff. Now, anybody else in here terrified of snakes? Am I really the only one that's terrified of snakes? No, I am petrified. Anybody in here like snakes? Yeah? You like snakes? As long as it's not a rattlesnake, poisonous, bigger than my foot, like, no. Okay? So, I got a small foot. So this thing turned into, I'm not going to throw this on the ground, my grandfather will be mad. But he throws it on the ground. It's about a 6-foot piece of wood. So it's not like this thing turned into like a garden snake. No, this thing turned into a huge snake. Huge snake. And I would have done exactly what Moses did. I would have ran. Would have ran for dear life at that point. And I think I would have been more scared of God yelling at me to stop and turn around. But we would have had some negotiation at that point to turn it into something else other than a snake. Okay? But he musters up the courage to reach down, grab it, and it turns back into a staff. Now, a shepherd's staff was basically, like that Build-A-Bear? Okay, back then they had like a build staff. So you got to design and build your own staff. Okay? So it was custom for every different person. Alright? So he threw it down, turned it into this huge snake, mustered up the courage, reached down, picked it back up. Okay? So here's my question. What is it that you need to throw down? And what is it that you need to pick up? When you throw it down, throwing down is easy. That part is easy. When fear rushes over you, when anxiety kicks in, because you see what it has turned into, and you know you have to pick something else up, are you going to have the courage to change it, to reach down and pick something else up. Is it anxiety that you need to throw down and get rid of that's part of your character? Is it fear? Is it anger? The big one is it a relationship? A friendship that's holding you back because your vision is different than their vision and they want you to compromise for your vision, but that's your bestie, you've been bestie for 6 years, but she's holding you down, literally like she's holding you down and you can't get to your goal and your vision. Okay? What do you need to pick up? Self-worth, confidence, faith, humility. Do I need to throw down pride and pick up humility? The biggest one that I put up there is singleness. Now, I'm not talking about being single. Because some of y'all are like, no, I need a man. I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, that is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is you are a single being. God created you. He didn't create Johnny for you. Okay? He created you. He has a purpose for you. He has a vision for you. Alright? So you need to learn and figure out who you are, what your self-worth is, what your character is, before you bring someone else into the picture. People have to me it's a bad habit of saying, I just need to find my better half. Because if I find my better half, then I'll be complete. What is that, Mark McGuire, you complete me? No, no, not true. Okay? If you haven't seen the movie, it's an older movie. Yes, I know I'm older, but you need to see the movie. Okay? But you need to learn to be a whole person. Who you are through and through. Because before you invite someone into your life, if you're expecting them to complete you, that's already too much pressure on that person. It's already going to not work. You need to be full to the brim. Baby, I was this way before you came into my life, and I'm going to be this way when you leave my life. Because I am who I am, because I am full. I don't need you to pour into my cup to fill me up. No, it's full. And if you do pour into me, it's an overflow at that point. Okay? So that is what I mean by throwing down certain relationships, picking up singleness, not being single or not being single. Okay? Find out who you are as a person first. Alright? And I think that's probably one of the biggest things because we are such people of, we like to be around people. We're made to be in a community. We're made to be around other people. But you got to be sure of who your character is and who you are as a person before you go around and be around other people. Does that make sense? Okay. Another thing that I didn't put up there, but some of us, myself included, need to throw down certain strongholds. Okay? And what I mean by a stronghold is something that you are gripping to so tightly that you're almost willing not to throw it down. It could be something, here's what I mean by it. I'm not willing to throw down getting drunk because it gives me the popularity vote. I'm not willing to throw down this pornography addiction because it makes me feel better. I'm not willing to throw down my anger issue because it makes people respect me in a certain way. Is this making sense? So these are certain particular strongholds. Okay? Alright. Change. Change is going to happen. It's going to happen physically. Gravity's going to take over at some point. Okay, unless you continue to lift weights, but even then. What you got?
I got you.
Oh, what happened?
You went backwards on the back to the one you
My bad.
did.
I promise I didn't touch it. Okay. Change is going to happen. Your friends are going to change, your taste is going to change, your body's going to change, your place of living is going to change, it's all going to change, okay? But you have a choice. You can be a victim of change. And if y'all know those people who are like, woe is me, everything that happens to them is just catastrophic. And then they play the blame game. Well, if the teacher wouldn't have done this, well, if my dad wouldn't have left, well, if my mom would be this, well, if my best friend would, and then blame happens, everything goes wrong. Any of y'all know that kind of person? That's the victim. And they feed off of that. It makes them feel good to complain, and it makes them feel good to basically have you pity them. That is something that gives them a high, okay? So you have a choice. You can be a victim, or you can be an agent of change. If you know you're about to graduate and you know that change is coming, get ready for it. Start preparing for it, okay? An agent of change is someone who initiates within themselves the change they desire to see for everyone. So I have most athletes in here. If you know that a certain change needs to happen on your team, initiate it. If you know that there's a certain vision, a certain goal that the team needs to hit, initiate it. Start influencing it. Paint the big vision. Does that make sense? Okay. So start working towards that in a positive way. Okay? Don't throw fuel on the fire and initiate it that way. Alright? You need to be proactive with change, not reactive. Any of y'all know a knee jerker? I'm not gonna lie, I have my moments of knee jerking. You can ask my athletes, I have my moment of knee jerking. Okay? When in reality I should have stopped, thought about what it is I needed to do, cut it off at the head, and then deal with it there. Okay? Not be the victim of it, but initiate a certain change within it. Okay? So, last slide. Goes right back to where we started. Alright. Are you worth following? And that is something that you need to ask yourself. Not, as a coach, I'm in a position where I kind of have to be a leader type position, okay? I have to have certain aspects of my character. There are certain things that I will not compromise for my athletes or for myself. But who's the one person I have to lead every day? Myself. Okay? So this is not just about leading another person. This is also very much about, can you lead yourself? Can you self-discipline yourself? Can you not compromise? Because your feelings are your feelings. If I hurt them, that's still on you, boo. Right? Okay. So I have to be able to, at the end and the beginning of the day, look at myself in the mirror and be okay with who I am, my character, okay? I have to be able to lead myself before I can ever lead someone else. Because it's one thing to sit there and tell that person, you know, if you would just leave him, and if you would just do this, but you won't let go of this relationship which you complain about. Right? Okay, that goes back to walk, talk to talk. Alrighty? What is it you need to throw down? Just whenever you go back to your dorms or your rooms, and just write down some stuff that you don't like about yourself. Be very honest with yourself. Okay? I am on a daily basis. If not, my sister's very honest with me. So, and everyone needs that kind of person in their life. I need, my sister who's like my Peter and my rock, because she's crazy like Peter. So I love her. But she's the one that comes to me and be like, you're in the wrong. And here's why you're in the wrong. And here's how you need to change it. And it's hard to swallow because I'm the kind of person where I don't like being wrong. But if I know that I am, I'm eventually going to give it and be like, okay, you're right. And here's how I change it. Okay? So have someone in your life that you can go to and be like, these are certain characters that I don't like about me. Is there anything else that you think I need to change, or anything on here that maybe you can help me with? Okay? And what are some things you need to pick up? And this is set for each individual. Okay? What are some things I need to get rid of? And what are some things I need to pick up? And it's not going to be easy. It's not. Reaching down, trying to grab that snake's tail is not going to be an easy thing to do. Okay? Throwing it down, it's pretty easy. But going through the process of picking something else completely different back up is not an easy task. It's not a daily fix. But if you're self-disciplined and you work on it daily, and you set a vision for it, and you're not willing to compromise for it, you can get to what it is that you want to change to. Alright? That is the last slide. Okay? So right now I'm going to kind of open up the floor for questions if anyone has a question. To be real with y'all, I am 34 years old, and there are still certain things about my character that I have been battling since I was in my teens and 20s that I'm still working on changing. Strongholds are a real deal. Generational curses are a real deal. Amen to that. One of my, just to be, transparent with y'all, one of my generational curses that I personally am dealing with on my father's side is anger. I have a very short fuse. And when it hits the fan, it hits the fan. And I get extremely, you can see it rising on my white face just turns red. And half the time I don't even know what comes out of my mouth. Okay? So that is something that I have been struggling with. It used to be worse. Thank you, Jesus, I'm not that same person. But it used to be worse, and I let a lot of my frustration out in sports. Okay? That is something that I'm going to continue to work on. I'm not going to perfect these things that I want to change, but that's the beauty of it. I get to work on it every day. I'm a little bit of a better leader every day. Okay? So, whenever you leave here, start thinking, what is it I don't like or need to change? Who is it I need to let go of my life? That's not an easy thing either. I let my best friend of 6 years go. And I basically told her, look, I love you, but we cannot be friends. You're going in a completely different direction than I am. I'm not willing to compromise. And it was tough, but it needed to happen. And I've become in a better place, and she's become in a better place. And it worked out great for both of us, but in that turmoil, it hurt. Okay? So, what do you need to throw down? What do you need to pick up? Alrighty? If you do have questions for me, come and ask me. Most of y'all know where I'm at. Most of y'all actually have my own personal cell phone number. Dang it. Alright? Just come and ask me if you want to talk about anything, or if you want me to tell you a character.
Our generation is changing, and it makes you think, like, maybe that makes you think you really need something, or like the people around you, make you think you really need something, you really need.
The Instagram generation? That's kind of what I call it. Snapchat. But here's what I've learned about people. They make the outside, like Samson, look really pretty. Because they're not willing to tell you the crap that they're actually going through. Which to me is so much more real. Like if I'm going through an anger issue, I'm going to tell you. And it's kind of goes back to like what I said. It's a daily structure type deal of, yes, your best friend has the car that you want. But are you willing to compromise like he did to get that car? And for me, I used to be kind of big. I was a horrible sneakerhead. I loved shoes. Still do. I have to bring myself back from buying them. But I was willing to kind of compromise some certain things about my characteristics to get materialistic things. And then I grew up, and I got a job, and a house payment, and I was like, not today. I gotta pay the bills. But it's not gonna be an easy thing to do. And you just gotta most importantly, if your friends aren't willing to be real with you about what they did or what they're going through, how they compromised, or what it is that they're not doing to better themselves, you gotta be real with yourself. Because at the end of the day, your friends that are within your generation, they might care about you, but they don't care at the level which you care about you. Does that make sense? So, does that kind of answer your question? Okay. Because yeah, I mean, we live in a generation where I get to see every day what Cardi B has, what Jennifer Lopez has, and they make it look so lovely. Like Oprah, I do not want to see your house. I don't, because it makes me feel bad, right? And we can set those goals. Those aren't bad goals to reach. They're not. But I'm not willing to compromise to get up to the ladder of the vision and the goal that I have. Because I want to be able to look at myself at the end of the day and be like, you didn't get as far as you wanted today, but you didn't compromise either. You worked hard. Does that make sense to everybody? What other questions? That's a really good question. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, that's your hand.
So what would you say, so talking to yourself and figuring out all the things you need to go down and you're like, okay, I got this, and I understand what I need to change. How do you think you should start? Like once you realize that you do need to go down and start to pick up new things, where do you start with all of that?
I would say, for me, here's how I start. I get with someone, I got with Connie, and I said, this is what I don't like. This is what I do like and what I want. How do I get there? And Connie was very real and honest with me. Well, maybe if you were to go to a small group, or maybe if you were to sell some of your possessions that you're so attached to. Maybe if you were to, in this relationship, and we'll start hanging out more and doing more things together. You know, just different things like that. And then also another one for me was scripture, or listening to sermons like Michael Todd. And because those pastors that are on YouTube, and Stephen Furtick, Michael Todd, Bishop T.D. Jakes, you know, all those guys touch on specific subjects. Like, I know Michael Todd, whenever I was going through basically completely cutting off my best friend, I went through his relationship goals. And some of the stuff was relevant to me, and some of it was not. You know, because I was a best friend, not a boyfriend. So there were some things that were different. But just any kind of knowledge. You know the saying, leaders are readers? I picked up a lot of different books on certain subjects in which I needed to change. And that helps me a lot, because I liked the actual book, because I like to dog ear and write, maybe spill a little something in it, you know. And then people are like, hey, can I borrow the book? No, you can't, because it's a hot mess, because it's mine. But, you know, that's how I learned and how I kind of started to change, because I learned different things that I can put into play, and that's what I started to do. Does that answer your question? Help you out? Awesome. Anybody else? Yes, no? Okay. If you do, you know where I'm at. If you don't, then you're doing pretty good. All right. It is 7:21. You guys are dismissed. Thank y'all so much for coming and staying and listening to me. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Seriously.